Let's jump over to college football for a prop bet. This one focusing on the Michigan Wolverines. Michigan lost an ugly one last week to Wisconsin. Head coach Jim Harbaugh officially on the hot seat. Rick, will Harbaugh return to Ann Arbor to coach the Maize and Blue in 2020?
This is a close one, okay, because we're not towards the end of the season, so we still have some tough games. They still got to play Penn State, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Notre Dame. Fortunately for them, other than the Penn State one, all those other games are at home. So they have a good shot there. Yeah, Harbaugh has been terrible on the road against ranked opponents. He's been terrible against Ohio State, hasn't won yet. He hasn't done well against Michigan State. He hasn't done well against Notre Dame. Like, everything's stacked against him in terms of winning the big ones. But if you look at it, he's like 26-11 in the Big Ten. And he's, 40-16 or something like that, overall record. If they let him go or fire him, unless he has a losing season or loses like 5 or 6 games or something like that where they don't even make a bowl game, you can't fire him right now. You would set this program back at least 4 or 5 years. Look where they were before they got Harbaugh. They were not a good team at all. They were a laughingstock of the Big Ten again. After being up high, they got knocked down so low. It took Harbaugh coming in. He's a great recruiter. He's got connections with the NFL. He's a good coach when he has enough talent around him. Right now, they're playing below expectations. I think they need to bring him back. They'll be on the hook for $15 million if they fire him. They have nobody else that it will be better than him, even remotely rumored to be interested in taking the team. In the prop bet, they list David Shaw and Urban Meyer. First of all, the Urban Meyer one, I literally almost spit water out my nose. I was laughing so hard. And that David Shaw, why would Shaw leave Stanford where he has a better shot of winning the Pac-12 in the next couple of years than winning the Big Ten with Michigan in the next couple of years? Like, it would be a dumpster fire if they got rid of Harbaugh right now. They do not have a system in place that could help them continue to be a competitive program moving forward. You have to stick with Harbaugh unless he has a complete losing season, and then it's like, okay, you throw your hands up because there's nothing you can do about it. But if he goes 9-4, which is perfectly possible this year, then how are you going to fire him? He's never had a losing season yet. His worst record was 8-5. 3 out of 4 years, he's had 10 wins. Yes, he hasn't beat Ohio State, but come on now. 90% of the college football teams would take that winning record, even in the Big Ten. Seriously.
Yeah, I think we kind of get caught up, or some people do, in a prisoner of the moment type thing. Like, they just had that ugly loss, so then that means he must be fired before next season. I agree with you. I don't think it's necessarily the case, mostly because I don't know who they'd get to replace him. There's just no one out there that is going to be jumping all over themselves to take the Michigan job right now. Les Miles is at Kansas, and I don't know if Les Miles would even be an upgrade over Jim Harbaugh to begin with. There's no real reason to think he suddenly forgot how to coach. Over the last couple of years, he succeeded everywhere he went before. He's been relatively successful at Michigan. Not beating Ohio State. Most teams don't beat Ohio State. I know that's how people judge Michigan coaches, but it's a little bit ridiculous. The Urban Meyer thing is absurd, of course, just because I think he's going to go to USC, and I would bet on that if I could. There's no way he doesn't, because he took time to be with his family, and he'll be back next year with USC, no doubt. But yeah, I don't think they're going to fire him. I understand the panic that Michigan fans may be experiencing, but it's a little bit premature, I think.
Before I get into my thoughts on Harbaugh, I have to mention the Meyer stuff because it's very funny for me as someone who was at Florida State when Urban Meyer was the coach at Florida and who saw him try to leave to take time with his family twice. He left UF for the first time for a week for health issues or time with his family, whatever it was, got a raise, came back, then lost to Florida State for the first time as a coach, and then left to spend time with his family, immediately took a job with ESPN, and a year later, whatever it was, ended up at Ohio State. To see friends of mine who are Ohio State fans who believed in their heart of hearts that he was actually going to retire. He's not going anywhere. Ohio State was his dream. That was all he ever wanted. And I'm like, no, he's going to have a bad recruiting class where something's going to happen. He's going to step down. He's going to leave for a year. He'll go to ESPN or he'll be a broadcaster for a year. And then he'll end up going to another school and he'll do the same thing. Urban Meyer coaches for 5 years, 6 years at a time and leaves because he either burns a bridge, something gets uncovered, or he loses his ability to recruit after a few years. He just takes it easy and coasts a little bit and then leaves for a different job. So that's going to be hilarious because I agree with you. USC seems like a prime landing spot for Urban Meyer, and they'll enjoy him for 3 years, hate him for 2 years later when he ends up somewhere else. But as far as Harbaugh goes, I agree with you guys that it's an overreaction to seeing a bad loss to Wisconsin and to say that, oh, well, he's got to be fired now. But when you don't beat Ohio State, when you don't win big games, college football coaches going 9-3 at a major program, that's not a good record. 9-3 means you lost every game that meant anything. 9-3 means that you beat the teams you were supposed to beat, you beat teams who are above average, and you lost to everyone who was worth anything. That's what a 9-3 record is in college football for basically any conference and most any division. Some of them you have to be 10-2 to do that. But what I could see is that there is going to be a time, and I don't know if it's going to be the end of this year, but if they lose to Penn State, if they lose to Ohio State, it might be this year that Harbaugh goes because you have to put out one big win. You've got to do something when you're at a major program like Michigan. Getting them back to being a good team isn't enough. You've got to prove that you can be great. And I don't think that Harbaugh has gotten his team to a point yet where you've always gone, they're on the verge. They're this close, but they always come up short. And sometimes when they come up short, like against Wisconsin, they really come up short. They come up ridiculously short. So I don't know if it'll be this year, but if I found good odds on it, I might take Harbaugh to leave Ann Arbor at the end of this year. And if he loses to Penn State, or if he loses one more big game this year, if the next big game that's on schedule, which I don't know what it is for the Wolverines, but if they lose that one by more than one touchdown, then I would say this is his last year. All right, let's shift into a segment we're calling Whose Season is Over. We're entering week 5 of the college football season. Some teams with big postseason hopes are already standing on thin ice or might even be on the outside looking in already. Taylor and I, along with Jim Avilia, provide plenty of college football betting picks each and every week in our show, Power 5 Picks. Make sure to check that out on the channel or by clicking the little info button in the top corner of your screen now. If I get my directions right, I think it's that corner of the screen. Rick, which team or teams jump out as either being done when it comes to postseason potential or are at the very least on the verge of it this weekend?
Last weekend we talked about my big one was Notre Dame, and I pretty much think they're done because, they can't win a conference championship. This week, I have 2 teams. One is Virginia. They play at Notre Dame this weekend, and I think Notre Dame's going to win. And Virginia pretty much needs to go undefeated and win in their conference and stuff to even have a shot of being in the top 10 in the ranks and stuff like that. They're top 20 right now. I think they're 18th, but they're not going to win on the road at Notre Dame. This is one of their biggest football games in recent memory that I can think of. The other one is one of the teams that I typically root for, Cal, Berkeley. They're playing Arizona State, and Cal, has surprised people going undefeated and moving up to 15th in the standings. But Arizona State, I love what they did at Michigan State when they pulled off that upset. Herm Edwards is a great coach. They've got a feisty team, a strong defense. They did have a little bit of a letdown when they just lost to Colorado. Otherwise, they would be undefeated as well and probably ranked. But that just means this loss that Cal's going to have is even more hurtful for them. As much as I would like to see Cal run away and take the Pac-12 conference, this is the beginning of the end of those dreams for anybody that's down in the Bay Area, down in Berkeley, enjoying some of that herbal stuff, thinking that Cal Berkeley is going to be the best team in college football.
Hopefully no one actually thinks that. Notre Dame, I don't think they're done yet. I don't think a close loss at Georgia dooms them. And I think, obviously they can't win a conference, but they are Notre Dame. And I think that outweighs a lot of other factors that the committee may have for other lesser teams that aren't as well thought of as a team like Notre Dame just because of their prestige and all that stuff. But if they lose to Virginia at home or even have a, kind of a nail-biter win, I think they will be done. Another team is Washington. They're playing USC this weekend at home. Washington's looked great lately since their loss. But, USC has kind of been up and down. USC is capable of beating them. But, I don't think the committee is going to look favorably upon that loss to Cal, even if it was weather-related and kind of fluky. I think a loss is going to just be a loss. And I think a Pac-12 team like that probably had to go undefeated to get in. At most, you can lose one game, and it's good that it was early in the season. So if Washington storms their way through the rest of the schedule, wins the Pac-12 and all that, they have a chance. But if they barely beat USC, or if they lose, of course, they're definitely toast.
So I've got three teams who I think were not done a week ago that are done now. Going back to our previous topic, Michigan. I don't think that they're going to be in the college football playoff. And when you're the Wolverines, that means that you have failed them the season, especially at this point in Harbaugh's tenure. The Wolverines are done. They lost to Wisconsin dramatically. I don't see them winning out anyway, but that for me that pushes them aside from the playoff conversation. UCF is a team that probably wasn't going to get into the college football playoff anyway. And we have seen teams that have lost to Pitt in the regular season in the last few years make the college football playoff. It happened to Clemson a couple of years ago, I believe, where they lost to Pitt during the regular season. But UCF doesn't play enough down the line to make that worth it. Maybe, again, 2020 check in on the Knights, but they're done for the year. Texas A&M, they are the first team in the SEC West to officially bite the dust, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to contending for Bama's throne. Alabama's still in it, LSU's still in it, Auburn's still in it. A&M was the only other one that was going to be contending. They lost to Auburn. Texas A&M is done. The Aggies, goodbye. See you. Thanks for playing. We will see you next year. Because there's nothing the Aggies can do in my mind that would get them into the college football playoff. And for me, that's kind of what defines a season being over, is when you have those types of expectations and you're already out of it at this point after 4 weeks. I hope you enjoyed that segment from the Odds On Favorites podcast. If you did, there's plenty more where that came from. Click on the link on your screen now to be taken to the complete podcast from this week, or check out the channel to find the other individual segments. And make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Odds On Favorites YouTube channel for plenty more sports and sports betting picks, tips, and how-to guides.